So, Daniel, over to you.
Hello, so it's lovely to see everyone today for this webinar. So it's on managing relationships with chronic pain. And my name's Daniel. I'm a cognitive behavioural psychotherapist. And I also live with chronic pain as well on a daily basis. Not CRPS, but I have rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia. So I can also talk from a personal perspective as well today, so I can incorporate a little bit of that within the webinar today. So it's lovely to see everyone, and thank you everyone for coming. So the aims of the webinar today, so we've got quite a bit to cover really, but I want to make sure that everyone's happy with everything and we're kind of not leaving anything out, or not as much as possible. So the aims, we're going to touch on the link between chronic pain and relationships and how living with chronic pain can impact relationships as well. We're going to be looking at the common issues for people living with long-term conditions, but also solutions for that as well. And within that, people who are single, who aren't in relationships, families of people, parents, children who live with a long-term condition, and also partners as well of people living with a long-term condition. So we've tried to cover all bases, and that's been the aim today. So we've got a lot to get through. So I hope everyone's happy with that. So chronic pain relationships. So chronic pain, as most of us deal with, if not all, is an ongoing pain that lasts for months or years. And it basically means anything over 12 weeks, 3 months, and it kind of ongoing really after that. But at least 12 weeks, despite medication or treatment for that. And most people get back to normal after pain following an injury or an operation, but sometimes the pain can carry on for longer or comes on without any history of an injury or operation. And sometimes it's not the physical, even though it is really debilitating pain that the person endures, but also it's the pain that it takes away from us all, including personal relationships. Now, human beings are social creatures, we seek others, we want to feel connected. That's part of our being as mammals. But relationships are a cornerstone of the happiness, and it leads us to hopefully have a full and loving life, as we all deserve. And we have family and friends, colleagues, intimate partners, and hopefully we all have them. And they give us people to share our lives with. And it can be up and down within them relationships. And they've been ongoing for a long period of time now, since time began. And chronic pain can affect relationships. It can have a big toll on our lives, unfortunately, especially when we live with certain people as well. And the life the person has built and become accustomed to change either gradually or suddenly. So sometimes one day someone could, deal with chronic pain, and it can happen gradually over time, but can happen sometimes so suddenly, and it can be such a massive shock for the person living with chronic pain, and that then leads that person having to deal with that for the rest of their life, potentially. So it is a lot to deal with. And for the person or people watching, it can be really, really hard for them in terms of maybe how to support that person as well. But sometimes, though, on the other side of that, sometimes we have people who don't want to understand that and maybe shut off. So it can be a two-sided coin thing. So dwindling compassion as a result of the ongoing nature of chronic pain. So sometimes compassion from a loved one can seem to wane as a result of the ongoing nature of chronic pain. There may be a suspicion that the condition is being exaggerated, or the person's a hypochondriac, so health anxiety. And some people might even believe it's all in your head, which is something that is so common, and something I hear about in my personal life, but also professional life as well. That people say it's just in your head, if they are really struggling to come to terms with the situation. And also, I've put a link below in terms of some research. But research suggests that problems in a relationship can significantly impact the severity of pain experienced by the person. And that can be, due to many different factors. Predominantly stress as well can have a big, massive play on the pain, as well, that someone can experience. And the study also suggests and levels of depression experience as well. So it can have an impact on mood and anxiety as well within that. So good communication is an important part of maintaining the changes that you make, which is obviously why it's so important, why we're doing this today. But it can be difficult because it can feel like you're trying to describe an invisible condition. You may feel that others have experienced it themselves, but they can't understand what it's like to live with it. You might think that other people don't believe you, which is such a massive common one. You may feel like you have to cope alone. Some family and friends may ignore the pain or get fed up hearing about it as well. But on the flip side of that, some family and friends may become overprotective, want to do everything for you, which then, you become less independent and more dependent on others. But also that can be quite frustrating as well, the fact that you want to live an independent life, but you feel as though you're unable to do that. And they can tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing, which again links with that one exactly, in terms of maybe allowing you to become less independent. And when these situations arise, we can have these unhelpful cycles that can be set up. So we have the pain that that we live with, but people can ignore you as a result of that, or maybe overprotect, and then um, you feel miserable. So it then has an impact on the feelings that you have, and then you withdraw, and you can get snappy. You maybe overdo too much. You think you should, or to prove that you can. So that's maybe sometimes why we push it a little bit, because you're trying maybe to prove to other people that, yes, I can do things myself. Yes, I can live an independent life. But then as a result of that, of overdoing it too much, it can then cause more pain. And that is a cycle that can be experienced for people on a day-to-day basis. And within CBT, we look at the relationship between our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And actually, it links very, very much with this, the fact that we experience the pain, people ignore you. It may have some link between our thoughts there as well at some point within that. The fact that, why do I feel like I can't do things myself? Why are other people interpreting that? So it might have some internal thoughts there that we tend to get. So how living with chronic pain has an impact on relationships. So it's misunderstanding about the toll chronic pain can take. So this is because chronic pain can mean the person is unable to do something or attend something. So they feel reluctant to explain their condition at this point. But they don't have the words because they're still coming to terms with the life with chronic pain themselves, which can take a long time to do. And the clients sometimes that I tend to see, it might be, the fact that they are struggling with that. And that's where therapy can help with that. And not just cognitive behavioral therapy as such, but also acceptance and commitment therapy as well. But because there is this, people have to come to terms with that, it can lead to isolation as well. The fact that people can also feel like a burden on other people, which then can also then impact relationships. Not understanding chronic pain can be incurable. Many people can think that, yeah, be on this medication, it can cure you. Chronic pain is not curable. Treatment may be available to manage and alleviate the pain, but they don't provide a cure at the end of the day. The person living with a long-term condition and their family or friends or partner, each time a treatment is presented and tried, this can also have an element of hope that the treatment will provide a cure for some, and lead to maybe a more, comfortable lifestyle. But actually, doesn't provide a cure at the end of the day. And often these treatments can end disappointment on both sides, especially if you're at the beginning of, your chronic pain condition, maybe you're not too sure what to expect. But also on the other side, the fact that if a family, friend, partner doesn't understand what chronic pain is or doesn't understand the condition, then maybe that could lead to maybe some disappointment there. And it is, as we know, a roller coaster of emotions. It is hard on everyone involved, but accepting that chronic pain is a permanent part of life is really difficult, but something that unfortunately we have to face in order to live a more, a more enjoyable life, as we all deserve to have. So thank you for everyone sending in different issues and things. So I've tried to collate them into this. As we can see, here, people think that the pain's in my head. And I put in the brackets, including some healthcare professionals, because I know that within myself as well, the fact that, the people actually believe me. But that is something so common, and I've had so many times from people in therapy. My friends can't understand why one day I can go out and be a normal teenager or person, and then next day I need a wheelchair to get around. So that can be very difficult for certain people. My family thinks I'm making it up. You don't understand that it isn't a broken bone that can be fixed in 8 weeks. People need tips on how to communicate pain and to be taken seriously. So that's something today that we'll be incorporating within the slides. I wish more understood. I've lost family because they're so cruel about saying I'm too young and that I'm lazy. The list goes on. And that's something actually I resonate with, when I was younger. And people think, that, you're too young to be getting it. But actually, it can, it can happen at any age. I don't talk about my pain because it freaks people out. My family doesn't, they don't care, they don't believe me. And actually part of me wishes I could share those deeper connections and moments about it, but the other part would rather keep it to myself and continue on around others without much expression over it. So maybe there is some element of being frightened maybe about what other people think, potentially within that, amongst other things. But this is something that, goes on for many people with long-term conditions. It is normal, completely normal. And I really want to say that today. I really want to emphasize that, is that if people think that, someone's got an issue or they've made a comment about them, it is completely normal. I hear it all the time. It's happened personally, so it's completely normal. And you're not the only one going through that right now. So some solutions. So there's various different ones, and it's good to maybe try different ones as well. I think something that's really good, firstly, is writing letters to other people, to the other person. By doing that, it can help the other person to process the information before they speak to you about it. You could get all your feelings out there. You could write a full draft, full of anger and accusations, and things like that. But you don't need to, don't send that one, but it just gets your anger out there. So writing letters to the person, writing a letter, email, text message, and that's actually the same with the other one as well. Writing letters or an email or a text to another person. But actually, one that you don't send is a really good therapeutic exercise. You might feel better after you've got them feelings out, and then you'll maybe be clearer about actually what you want from them as well. Also, it might not be the right time of the day to speak to that other person, potentially. It might be better speaking to them when they're not busy, or maybe asking them, what time of the day is good for you right now. So making sure that then you've got that time. Um, maybe bringing the other person to the appointments with you. So to gain maybe some understanding around your long-term condition. So that can be something that's good because then that might give them an opportunity to ask questions, get leaflets, gather all this information together as well. So I think that's something that's really, really good. Another solution, assertive communication. So that's something that I do teach with clients, depending on what they come to therapy with. Also, as well, there is a handout on this. So I've got two handouts for you. And it's one of them is an exercise on actually how to do it. But another one is what it is. But assertive communication is basically expressing the needs, feelings, and ideas honestly and directly without putting down or hurting others. So this promotes mutual respect and encourages openness in relationships. So we have assertiveness, which is slap bang in the middle. But then on one side, we have aggressiveness. So aggressiveness can blame, it hurts others or offends others. Even if you don't mean to, it can come across like that. And then as a result of potentially speaking aggressively, then other people become defensive and it can be a little bit like headbutting. And then the relationship can become quite difficult. On the other side of that, we've got passiveness. And that is where maybe you're not getting your point across enough as well. So assertive communication, I think the best way to do that is starting with how it makes you feel. So if it's for example, if someone's maybe having a go about to you about chronic pain or anything like that, then I think the best way to do that is starting with how it makes you feel. So actually what you just said there actually really hurts me and it really kind of makes me feel very sad. And then the next bit of the communication tends to be, well, what do you want from that? So please can you stop doing that? So actually what you've just said is really hurting me right now. So please can you stop doing that? So it's touching actually on your emotions. It's not attacking anyone else by doing that. Reducing distractions. So picking a time when others are out, turn off the telly, take the phone off, be technology free basically, putting your phone on silent. So it means that both parties, are, distraction free really. So then you can get most out of what you want to discuss as well. Um, so some more solutions that are really good to use. So using the I word and avoid finger pointing. So this helps to make the message less accusing and threatening. So I'll put an example there. So, for example, I find it difficult when you walk away and won't listen. Might be easier for the other person to hear than you never listen to me anymore. So it encourages them to respond openly rather than backing off or arguing. So that can be a really helpful technique to use. Being clear in yourself, what you want to communicate, and sticking to the point. Paying attention to what your body language is saying. And sometimes we don't realize that, how our body language is coming across. This is a big part of communication, it's non-verbal communication. So it's thinking about your posture, expression, whether someone is sitting down and you stand up, then that can become quite intimidating. So it's good to go down to the same person's level. Having open body language, for example, not having your arms crossed, good eye contact, so not too much or too little. So it shows that you're listening to the other person, there's some element of engagement there, and thinking about your tone of voice as well. And also this one here at the bottom is very key, and I think this is a really good one to mention. And it's talking about other things besides the pain, which can be really difficult because when it overconsumes your life, it's a daily thing, it's a daily task. I mean, we all know the fact that we've got multiple other things to do within the day, and chronic pain is one of them that is really difficult to get right a lot of the time. So the key is remembering that you are a person first. You are a human being. You've that's just who you are. But it's not allowing that your pain to dominate conversations as well. Um, so common issues for single people or people who aren't in any relationships at all. So living with chronic pain can be an isolating experience, particularly with people who are single or live alone. And this can then result in an ever reducing circle of friends, especially when people don't listen, and by that I mean friends, they maybe don't want to invite you out anymore, because you've got chronic pain and things like that. But this can come from either side of the relationship. So withdrawal on the part of the person living with the long-term condition, potentially feeling, maybe a little bit depressed or feeling a burden, just don't want to put themselves out there, they don't want people to see them, potentially in a wheelchair with sticks, limping, whatever it is. Or there can be a lack of understanding from the person, which can include, family and friends. Family and friends may struggle with changes in the relationship as well. This lack of understanding about the condition can lead to compassion and tolerance dwindling. And plans being regularly cancelled by the person living with a long-term condition as a result of the unpredictability of the pain may lead to friends no longer including the person. So I've just mentioned then the fact that actually, if you cancel a lot, then people think, well, you're not interested anymore. But actually it isn't. And this is where communication is key, which again we'll go on to. The person may feel uncomfortable as well, maybe watching the friend in pain as well, which can lead to them withdrawing from the relationship as well. So it can be a two-sided thing. But the other side of the coin is that the person living with pain may withdraw from relationship, as I said. So maybe there is an inability to participate or participate fully in activities such as sport. So, football, rugby, but also work or evenings out. Because as we know, chronic pain or long-term conditions can come with other comorbidities, chronic fatigue syndrome, things like that, as well. So it can be a big thing. And actually, if we're talking about, some people might have heard of spoons and things like that. So if we have 10 spoons over a day and certain activities on a particular day equates to so many spoons, but when we've run out of them spoons, then we've literally got no more energy left. And that can obviously vary on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes, going to work can, wipe out all your spoons. Sometimes it can be 5 or 4. So it's a very subjective thing. So that's why sometimes it can be, difficult to engage in certain activities. Changes to the body as well, both seen and unseen. So, for example, for that, we've got an example is body perception disturbance. That is something that is really, really common with these CRPS patients. Body perception disturbance is a disgust to a particular limb. It can be the one that CRPS affects. Um, People can describe a particular limb with negative emotional feelings like anger, disgust, repulsion. And recent research as well has identified a strong desire for amputation of the affected limb because of, the perceived structure or the size, and dissociation of the limb. So actually feeling that it's not a part of you. And this, these perceptions may influence people's engagement in therapy as well. So I think that's something that's very key, and not many people know about that with CRPS, but it is so common. So I really want to kind of, normalize that. If you feel that particular limb potentially the one that CRPS affects, that there can be some anger and disgust, and feeling like it's not part of you, it shouldn't be there, then that is really common as well. And also within therapy, we can have a look at that as well. And because of that, because of these changes, it can have a severe impact on self-esteem and identity. And then as a result of that, we can withdraw from society due to a fear of rejection. Rejection from people in society, or it might not be that, but sometimes maybe we perceive a fear of rejection in society. And sometimes that can come when I'm working with clients, potentially social anxiety. So sometimes that's where we can go down that route as well. So that's something that we can look at. And as the person in pain pulls away more and more, this again has an increasing effect in invitations to socialize and go out. For someone living with chronic pain, the cycle of withdrawal, isolation, pain can lead to a downward spiral, and has an impact on meeting new people or partners. So solutions. So actually being single can be a daunting experience. It can mean relying heavily on support of family and friends, may mean moving back in with parents, to have maybe some support, or, not just with the condition, but maybe some social support, or, household jobs, things like that. Or if you live in a flat and it's hard to get up, then maybe your parents could maybe live in a house where it's one floor or whatever, or a bungalow. Another worry faced by single people is that they will build a potential relationship, and how they do that. So I think the key for that is spending time learning about chronic pain, about yourself, about and your body. Taking that time to reflect can help people think about actually what they want or need from a partner through learning about themselves. And can also help gain an opportunity to learn about actually how you deal with your own feelings and thoughts on pain as well. Self-compassion, self-care strategies, and understanding the changes in living with chronic pain, or worthwhile strategies to help manage chronic pain. Finding support, connection, when you're ready, reaching out for support, connecting with people in a similar position. This can be a good way to re-engage with the world. If you've engaged from it for a long time. And in these groups, you tend to find empathy, understanding, and knowledge about your condition, acknowledgement, sorry, about your condition as well, sharing tips and things like that. And these groups also offer services and useful information as well. And that's something at the charity something that we offer through our befriending service, community forum, live chats, monthly meetups as well, which are all on the website as well in terms of how to do that. But I think the key as well within, doing activities and things like that, and engaging with people, it can create serotonin, which is a hormone that's released within our body. And serotonin is actually a natural painkiller as well. So also it can alleviate some of the pain just by releasing serotonin in the body. Joining groups if possible, even if it's online, especially online nowadays after COVID, religious groups, voluntary organisations, some hobby groups. And I've put a link there, as research has shown that building social connections can help to reduce pain, increase function, improve quality of life by improving self-esteem and ownership, taking that control over your life. So common issues for families, people living with long-term conditions. So family provides a network, providing security and love, or at least it should do. However, not for all. And when a family member becomes affected or changed by pain, it can have an impact on the whole family. And often the person living with pain can start to withdraw from from the life they previously had. And sometimes it feels a little bit like a grief, which it is. You know, it is a grief. It's grieving for the life that you had previously. Um, and then as a result of that, people can tend to become isolated. And the only outings tend to be healthcare appointments. Treatments, they are undergoing may alter mood as well, which impacts relationships as well. And also certain treatments, like amitriptyline, for example, can affect, it can make you feel really drowsy. So that can then impact maybe how you are in the morning, for example. And then this can be compounded while well-meaning, but generally not always. So I want to put that in brackets, the fact that it's not always the case, even though we wish it to be. Family members trying to help and protect the pain-afflicted loved one. But sometimes they can reinforce unhelpful coping strategies and behaviours, which can then lead to increased levels of pain for the person with chronic pain and decreased levels of autonomy and self-confidence, without taking the control of your own life, which can then lead to becoming more confident. So solutions. Um, so learning about chronic pain, spending some time, knowledge and understanding is key, and you can become a better support to them, not having more understanding, more knowledge, potentially some empathy there, for the other person, the fact that actually, yeah, it is a lot to deal with. Attending appointments with them, really, really good if the person living with the long-term condition is happy for that. And talking openly about the pain they experiencing, if the person living with chronic pain is able to do so. This is something really, really key as well, including the person. While your loved one may always or often say no, continue to invite them. You know, this can help to remind them that there is a life outside pain. Not assuming. So please, do not assume that you know what your loved one needs. Asking how you can help, what they need, how they're feeling. Because if we don't ask, we don't actually know what the other person's wants or needs. We don't also understand as well, the whole picture for them. And therefore we can't help effectively as well. Um, Encouraging independence as well. Try to be encouraging, supporting as well. In terms of this allows the person to maintain a sense of ownership over their life, maintain self-confidence as well. Communicating directly to the person living with a long-term condition. So sometimes asking the carer how the person is in the wheelchair. I've noticed that so many times that people don't actually talk to the person, living with pain. They go to a family member and say, how's so-and-so doing? But what we want to be doing is asking the person, they are a human being at the end of the day, the person living with a long-term condition. And are able to speak for themselves. Common issues with parents living with long-term conditions. So whether chronic pain has come on after your children were born or something you had before they came along, parenting with chronic pain is challenging. And guilt can go hand in hand with parenting as you struggle to feel good enough amid the never-ending pressures and expectations. And for people living with chronic pain, sense of guilt can be alleviated due to your limitations. Maybe not being able to do as much as what you used to be able to do, and things like that. And guilt that don't have to go to, don't have time to go to certain events due to a long-term condition, because of medical appointments, side effects of medication, the fact that, you just physically can't get up off the chair, or you can't physically, move in the wheelchair. It just becomes an overwhelming sense of guilt, especially when, the child saying, mummy, daddy, please can you come? And there's that guilt that just comes over you. And also as well, spouses, so partners may have to take on more the caregiving role, maybe grandparents as well, older children. So then that can have an impact on them as well. But then that also makes you feel guilty as well, for asking other people to help, because you feel like you're taking their life and it's not their fault. They, that they shouldn't have to be doing that, for example. So solutions. So try to remember the child doesn't need a perfect parent. Children just need love, care, time, stability, which are gifts that actually pain can't take away, no matter how long you've been having the time and attention. So, they will be affected by parents' pain. So it's especially important to be when you can. Planning ahead. So actually there's no avoiding it. Chronic pain will often get in the way of activities, events. So for example, if your child has a football match, for example, bringing a chair, that you can sit with and watch. If you're having a family day out, plan it so that there's plenty of time and, there's, accessible facilities and things like that. If you've got wheelchairs, there are a ramp. Um, you know, this is important, which again, leads you to still maybe do the things that you want to do, but it might just have to be adapted. And therefore you can be more present for your children as well. Age appropriate communication, so explaining your pain condition in terms that are appropriate for your child, but also at their age or stage. How much detail you go into, is completely up to you, but it's also dependent on your child's age as well. So the main objective that I put on there is that your child understands limitations that you go through on a day-to-day basis, but also to avoid burdening them with excess worry, which can be difficult as well. Accepting help as well is another solution, which can be very difficult to do. Many family members and friends really do want to help, but sometimes just that clear communication on what they can help with, working at what time of the day you struggle with. And this could be the time your spouse takes a lead with the children, or could be your grandparent or sibling who helps out at this time. And that's why I put that quote on there, because it is, a very poignant quote. Is accepting help is its own kind of strength. Sometimes people see it as a weakness. But actually, it takes a lot for someone, to go up and say, please, can you help me? I need some help. And there's no denying that a life with chronic pain will affect relationships. But hopefully, the tips that we're going through today, that you maybe can find a way through the pain with those you love. Next, so common issues for children living with a long-term condition. Doubt, family engagements, guilty for taking parents' time away from doing tasks, other tasks or activities, bullying as well, which, sounds absolutely horrible, but, peers not understanding, the person's long-term condition, and things like that, or maybe picking on them because they do have that. Maybe it's not the fact that they don't understand it, it's just because they're being, really horrible. Another issue is how come one day I need to use a mobility aid, and the next I don't have to. This can be really, really hard. People living with a long-term condition in general. The fact that it's one day I'm okay, the next I'm not, and that can be really difficult for people, such as hugging, um, kissing, sex, things like that. Especially if the person living with a long-term condition deals with hypersensitivity. So that can be something that is very, common with a lot of long-term conditions. The fact that actually, it might hurt if someone touches you in a particular way. Chronic pain can also disrupt young person's school life. So young people may miss many school days as well. and then that can impact, being at school, education, um, results for GCSEs, A levels if the person wants to go on to further education. So it can have a knock-on impact. And even if these young people can attend school, experiencing constant pain can make it difficult to concentrate as well. So it's not the fact that living with pain, it's then there's multiple issues within chronic pain that can become an issue. For example, concentration, and taking part in activities, like sports day and, PE and things like that. The fact that, if I'm the only one that's not, taking part and everyone else is, how's that fair? Why should I have to go through that? What did I do to deserve this condition? Which again, not just for children, but so common for many. Missing out on school activities that can then impact making new friends, living with chronic pain, affects who they are, a sense of identity, which is, as people get older, especially teenager years, that's they're identifying maybe who they are. But then it's tricky when you throw long-term condition into the mix. And also as well, and this is something I resonate with particularly, is the fact that, you know, by certain conditions where pain is often invisible to others as well. If you break your leg, you can see it. Or if it's within your body, then it's not always clear to the other person as well. Um, and actually, sometimes family and friends, teachers might not, understand it as well, because you're unable to see certain long-term conditions. So solutions. So communicating in an open, honest way with the other person, including parents, teachers, or getting parents to speak to the school. This is key. Assertive communication, which we've gone through, the fact that it's expressing your needs, getting your needs across, but in a non-aggressive and non-passive way. Writing letters to the person, helping the person to process the information. So it's very, very similar to before. Maybe it isn't that time of the day. You speak to someone that maybe not busy. Maybe something's going on in their own life. Arrange a time when you're both able to spend time talking. Also, as well, I think what's a good system to use, and I put this in for children, but maybe for other people, older people, using a traffic light system, make communicating. So actually, if it's red, I don't want to talk right now. Yellow, maybe later, but not right now. And green, okay, I'm happy for you to talk. So that can be a really good, effective technique to use. You can put that on the fridge, outside on the door of your room. There's multiple different ways, or you could just hold it up. Self-care, connecting with other children is important. Like-minded people if possible. So this could be exercise group, religious group, voluntary organisation, etc. Partners are people living with long-term conditions. So actually it does have, it can have an impact on both partners, both people in the relationship. And it may dramatically alter the focus and the trajectory of the relationship. Maybe the roles and responsibilities have maybe been switched slightly, or maybe one person's taking more of the load now, the other person, more household duties, caregiving tasks, financial issues, which then adds the pressure then to an already difficult situation. The pain, affected partner may feel guilt or shame because the other person's having to take on more. Unpredictable moods and behaviour as well. A reduction in physical intimacy, so as I was saying before, hugging, kissing, sex, as a result of the diminished self-esteem or pain hypersensitivity. Whatever way the dynamics of a partnership change, the journey is one that both partners are on, and highs and lows as well. So solutions. So research, which I'll put the link below, has shown that mood and adjustment to life is linked to empathy, intimacy, and coping behaviours. So for this reason, repairing and rebuilding relationships and learning coping strategies is important. Self-care. So as I've mentioned before, regular exercise. It's also good, the fact that it's good to communicate the fact that actually, with the other person about, self-care and things like that, ensuring a balanced diet, regular exercise, seeking support. And by looking after yourself, it allows you then to look after the person affected and living with the long-term condition. Support groups as well, with people who are in similar situation, safe space event as well, which is something that we have within the charity as well. And I put that there, the fact that, we have our online community forum, we have live chat support, we have befriending, we have the counselling service, we have monthly meetups over Zoom. So, sometimes it's just, finding what's out there. But at the charity, we have loads of help and support for people living with CRPS in particular. Solutions, so fostering independence in your partner, allowing them to live an independent life as they deserve, or at least some form of independence, even though sometimes there might be some dependency there. It's good to have some form of control of their own life. Strategies, encouraging activity where possible, just getting out, fresh air. It's looking at what activities are there available that you're interested in. Pacing. So I've attached a handout for pacing that you'll get at the end of the webinar. And there's a really good technique within pacing. There's like a bit of a calculation in working out pacing, which again is variable, but there's a handout on that. Self-advocacy, self-confidence, well-being, good quality sleep, stress management, relaxation techniques. Again, effective communication, trying to be open and honest. Planning, setting goals, problem solving as well. That's something that I teach a lot of within therapy at times, problem solving, working on showing another compassion when able to, writing letters to the other person as well. So we have come kind of to the end of the webinar. I am interested in any questions that anyone's got, and hopefully we've covered a lot today, because obviously it is difficult within the time that we've got. But yeah.
First of all, Daniel, thank you ever so much for such a very detailed webinar, I think. And as you probably gather, we have got some questions for you. Quite a number, actually. So I think Lisa's got the list. Lisa, do you want to start going through the list?
Yes. So the first one is, as a caregiver, how can I prevent my partner from totally withdrawing and help her to find some joy in life?
Yeah, so it is really difficult. I think, there's no kind of going away from that. Really, really difficult. I think we've put some techniques on there that can be really helpful for that. And I think, being open and honest, the other person, something really, really key. Some assertive communication, person's not listening, that, actually it is having an impact on you in your life, so, it could be something along the lines of, actually, it's making me feel, make me feel kind of sad. It's really impacting my life. So please, can you listen? Around something around that. I think as well, is it the right time of the day? Has the other person got something going on as well? But I mean, there's no doubt that it is a really difficult part of that. But I think the techniques that we're including today would help somewhat with that.
This is more of a general question. Do people find intimate relationships are not easy to talk about?
Yeah, very. It's a massive taboo. And that's why I wanted to bring it today and include that in. Yeah, it can be really, really difficult. For both sides. The fact that maybe the person who's got long-term condition, maybe don't want to broach it with the other person, maybe doesn't want to upset them either. But then the other person might not want to then inflict pain potentially on others. So I think it's key to have a good open honest chat about it. I think it's same with a lot of things within this. It's having an open chat with that. Maybe writing a letter, to the person. That might be something, with anything like that might be good. First, that could be a good first step before maybe talking that, and that could just open the conversation. Just do some worry around that or things like that.
The next one, how to talk about the topic of not wanting children due to CRPS.
Yeah, yeah. As I say, can be really difficult again to broach that subject with someone. Again, having a clear, chat with the other person, making sure that they're, happy and able to talk that particular moment. Again, assertive communication within that, the fact that, that actually, and giving reasons for that as well. The fact that actually is having an impact on your life. And actually, I don't want, to have children, and depending on the reasons for that. But I think it's just, just trying to be as open as possible with the other person as well. Which I think is a message that goes through within a lot of this. I think sometimes it can be difficult as well just to make that first step. I think that can be the biggest thing for a lot of things. It's, maybe the worry for what the other person might think or anything like that, or what repercussions could become of that. But actually, sometimes we don't know what the other person might be thinking. What we do sometimes, the brain, it goes to this, because it's what we call unhelpful thinking styles within CBT, and we can predict what the other person thinks, or we catastrophize. But actually, that's very common. We all do it, even though we don't want to do it. It's something very common. So I think maybe sometimes it's hard to know maybe what the other person thinks, but we predict that.
So online, you've probably seen, if you're into social media and that kind of thing, sometimes people put TENS machines on their partners to make it seem like they're going through childbirth. Would this be a good idea to show our partners how much pain we're in?
No, definitely not. I don't think you should have to go to them levels to discuss that or to go through that. I mean, I would hope that, they probably potentially would see you being in pain anyway on a day-to-day basis. They should see that level of difficulty that having chronic pain has. So, no.
How to prevent or help your partner from feeling helpless?
Yeah. So this is something that's really, really common. Again, I think it's having a good, open and honest chat. If you fear that your partner is feeling like that, then it's, having that chat with them and making them feel that they're doing all they can. So maybe it's just having that chat. Maybe they need to hear that. Maybe they've not heard that you say that before. So it might be really helpful to discuss that with them. Maybe why they're feeling helpless. If they feel that they're not doing more around the house, then that might be a good opportunity for you to say, well, actually, you're doing this, 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 and this. You're doing all you can. You're working full time, or you're doing whatever. You shouldn't be feeling like that. But this is where sometimes people may come to therapy, because there is an element there that maybe it's not the fact that the other person's not saying it. It's because there's work that needs to be done around that. From another person, i.e. a therapist.
This is from a lady who has an elderly mother who is perhaps got the early stages of dementia, but has started to become very passive aggressive. The lady is also the caregiver for the elderly mother. How to deal with the passive aggressive behaviour?
Yeah, it is really difficult. I think what I would say to that, because if there is an element there of like cognitive, like a reduction in that, it is really difficult. I think with the handouts that I've sent, there is an element there of practicing that. But then if there's some cognitive impairment, then it's like anything, it's repetitiveness. I think that's the key for that. It's just doing it again and again. But it is really difficult. I think there's no kind of going away from that. But yeah, I think practicing it and accessing support as well. From maybe other people as well, because it's hard to deal with, especially if they're the caregiver. Really hard to deal with. If you've got that going every day, it's really difficult. But it's not the other person's fault either. So it's a double-edged sword, really.
This one's again quite a common one. So my partner has CRPS long before I met him. When his pain is high, he lashes out verbally and can even be cruel at times. I do get bothered by it sometimes, but try not to take it personally and let it go, as I know he's in pain. My question is, how do I navigate this? Do I call him out on it and risk escalation into a full-blown argument? Do I keep trying to practice patience and allow him to let his anger out? Or are there any specific things I should do or shouldn't do?
Yeah, so I think what I would do for that is I would practice assertive communication when you're not having an argument. So that's what I would do. So me and the other person, we were practicing it, a couple of times a week, or as frequently as we possibly can. And then by practicing it, it then can become a little bit ingrained in the other person. But that's not to say that sometimes it doesn't escalate, because it can sometimes just happen when we don't expect it. So that's the key for that. I think, if it's also an outburst as well, it might be the fact that he's building it up inside. He's building up his emotions, which then causes this lash out. So it might be maybe some frequent communication as well. Schedule it in the diary, or whatever, schedule it in someone's schedule, because also that's not helpful as well. And that won't be good for the other partner as well.
These next two questions are kind of interlinked.
Okay.
So there was a person asking on solutions for physical intimacy, and somebody else put in that their partner is scared of hurting them or causing them pain during intimacy.
So I think for that, I think it's just being really open, really clear with the other person. The fact that obviously if they are hurting you, then then it's having that chat with them afterwards or during. But it's been very clear. It's been very open with it, which again can be a bit of a taboo thing. But I think with a lot of this, being open and clear, both sides of the argument, asking the other person how it maybe makes them feel, and they can say helpless or any other emotions to get from that. Then it's just having that chat with them, being open about it. The fact that it's not their fault that that they're doing that, or they're hurting in any particular way. It's just part of the condition. Maybe it's broaching it, maybe with healthcare professionals as well. For example, specialists as well coming to appointments. It is a real difficulty, because, as we know, long-term conditions are unpredictable. It's very hard that even if we schedule intimacy in, for example, then it's different on different days. It's we don't have I wish we did, but the fact is that it can be difficult. So again, having an open conversation with a person, getting both sides of the argument.
And also, I know it's a taboo area that people don't talk about. As much as there are disability aids for your daily living, there are aids for the bedroom too. If you look in the right places, you can find them to make your life easier, if that is the biggest problem is your disability or the way you can move or can't move. We're still on that subject. I'm not interested in sexual relationships anymore. Is this unusual?
No, that's entirely up to the person. It's a completely individualized thing. And I think that's same for people who live with long-term conditions and not. So no.
More, Victoria.
There was one earlier, not on the general idea of difficulty in saying no and looking after this person's nieces and nephews, like having the mum to say, what's the best way around?
Yeah, I
say
think,
no?
yeah, it is really, really difficult. I think I struggle with that at times. You know, it can be so difficult depending on the situation. But I think the way forward for that is, is again, straight communication. Is that is putting your feelings across, not finger pointing as well. Using the I word. To use that. But also, I think, if you think that it's necessary, maybe, I mean, you shouldn't have to justify, but, obviously I'm struggling with chronic pain right now. It's really difficult. It's so unpredictable. Then obviously I'm unable to do this right now. So it's just being insistent, the fact that actually, if you did say yes and you did, engage in the activity or whatever it is, the fact that then that has then an impact on your life. You could then be bedridden for the next day. So actually, as a result of you doing something good at the time to please the other person, isn't always a helpful thing to do, because then that has an impact on your own life, your own condition.
And there's another one I've just seen. So it says, our eldest son decided that he was being used when we asked him for help getting our youngest to school, and he now hasn't spoken to us for a year. He's turned it round that he is treated awful because we had to ask for help. We don't ask anymore, so we haven't. So we've had to accommodate having even less support.
Yeah. So that's really, really difficult. I'm really sorry, to the person who put that on. That's something that shouldn't be the case. And, it's a support one another. What I think would be good for that, if able to, when I've had clients before, it has become a really successful technique. Writing letters to the person, because sometimes having that chat, it can come across as aggression, not from you, but maybe from the other person. That can then cause and escalate and fuel the fire. So I think sometimes writing it down, texting, emailing, whichever way, is a really good technique to do that. And maybe putting in maybe some assertive communication within that. The fact that actually what you're doing is upsetting me and things like that. And maybe seeing if there's a solution around that. But it is really difficult, because then the other person might still put a barrier up to that. But at least that you've done all you can. You've done the, it maybe should alleviate some sense of guilt or anything like that can be associated with that. So I think that's a really good technique to do. Maybe trying that avenue.
There's also, I'd like to have more relationships with people who accept and understand me, who'd want to hang around with somebody in bed or on the sofa majority of the time.
Yeah, again, really difficult, because people see that if you're not out and about or anything like that, then how can you meet people? I think there's so much nowadays with online and things like that, but again, that can come with its own challenges as well. Is it a scammer or or the catfishing or anything like that? But I think trying to maybe do some and if you are bedridden, but some Zoom, support groups, engage with others. I don't think there should always be a pressure on with relationships, in terms of like intimate relationships. Just having meeting up with people, bringing that sense of enjoyment, the serotonin, the connection with others I think that's a bigger thing. I think before if things did move to the next level, because you can only love yourself if you're, if you're doing things as well, if that makes sense. The fact that, maybe some self-care within that is good before then loving someone else.
Thank you.
Is that it?
Oh, one's just come in, I think. Oh, two just come in actually. Okay, so like a baby, worked as a babysitter during 10 years in the same family. Now, when I have pain, be afraid to take care of an hour because of unpredictable pain. What could I do to not feel so frustrated about not being full in their lives?
Really difficult. I'm, really sorry to hear that that's having an impact on your life. I think for that, it's maybe having the discussion maybe with, the other person, if it is the nephew, and just saying, obviously, these are the reasons for that. It's upsetting and it's impacting. It's not nice, but this is the unpredictability of the condition that I'm being faced with. I think if you are able to at any point, to engage with the other person, with the nephew or anything like that, then you could still, hopefully go out or do something, some form of support, reaching out for others as well, around you to make sure that you're okay. So if you are struggling, the fact that you've got, some help around you if needs be, but you still can have, people around your house. I mean, if it's a young person, it might be difficult to pick up and things, but there are adaptations. There are things that you could maybe try and manage. Maybe it's looking at that. Maybe it's looking at maybe things like that. Really, that I think would be really good and help with, if that makes sense.
One last question. I have a sister who wants me to do the housework. As she says, the responsibility falls on her a lot of the time. I've tried to help, but it can leave me in bed for days. But she makes me feel bad for not being able to help or not doing enough. Or do I do it? I've tried to be assertive to her and explain my condition. She just seems not to want to listen to me and what I'm going through, and is leading me to be resentful. But it's in
Common, so many, um, you know, maybe writing a letter, maybe seeing if that can help, maybe putting in there as much in terms of actually how difficult it is, for you, living with a condition on a daily basis. Actually, it's not your fault, and actually, I wish it could be different, but maybe bringing the other person to an appointment, that could be something if we wanted to do. Maybe that could have some positive impact. And I think with any of these issues, we can have solutions and things in place, but if someone wants to just completely shut off, then it's at least that everything that you've done, everything that we included within the slides and the presentation, as long as you know that you've done everything that you can, then there's not much else you can do. And hopefully that should alleviate some, sense of guilt, helplessness, feeling like a burden. Hopefully that should have an impact in reducing that, because in a day, if you're writing letters, they're ripping it up, you send text messages, they're not replying to it, deleting it, then it can be really difficult, and there's no kind of getting away from that as long as you're communicating the best that you can, and you're maybe trying to include them into maybe appointments or spending a little bit of time with you, and actually maybe this is the reason why maybe I can't come out, this is the reason why why I'm feeling like this. Maybe sometimes I think with people, maybe they just don't understand. They're not living in your shoes on a day-to-day basis. But maybe if they solve it, maybe there's an element that, maybe they might potentially change. Because I've had that before, when people have said, "Oh, I didn't realise you had to do that. I didn't realise you had to get a blue badge. I didn't realise that." And then they've shifted a little bit.
and it's like the age-old saying of you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You can give somebody as much information as possible. You can do everything in your power, and the rest is out of your control.
Yeah, and I think that's as long as you know you've done everything.
Yeah.
Then there's not much, not much else. Yeah, but there is something else I do want to mention, and it is around CBT. So can I just say, if anyone wants CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, or acceptance commitment therapy, so under the umbrella of CBT, we've got acceptance commitment therapy. We've got different forms of therapies within that. And if it's not within the charity, so obviously that's what I do within the charity, please make sure that the cognitive behavioural therapist is level 7 trained. Please make sure they have to be level 7 trained. And on the BABCP website, on the BABCP register, because if they're not a CBT therapist. And I've had this for so long now, and it really, it really makes me upset, because people who I see within the charity and even outside of the charity is they say that they've had CBT and then they weren't level 7 trained. I see it on websites where they say the level 6, level 5, they've done a 1-day course on CBT, or a 6-month course, and they call themselves a CBT therapist. They shouldn't be able to do that, but it's not a protected title. So cognitive behavioural psychotherapist is not a protected title. Anyone can say that they are, even if they've been on a 1-day course. So I'm saying that because if you do, then please make sure they're level 7 trained, because level 7 means they've had to undergo a certain level of training, like myself. And as I say, anyone can get away with it. So if they're not level 7, please, it could make your issues worse by doing that. And also it can give CBT a bad name, because the person who did sit in wasn't actually a CBT therapist, just like on a 1-day course and they're actual level 5 trained. It can also, if you want to work on trauma, as well. So if there's some PTSD, then if they're not doing that, they can actually re-traumatize yourself. So it is B, I just saw that on the chat, BABCP. So there's the BACP for counsellors and psychotherapists, but if you are a qualified CBT therapist, it is BABCP. So I just wanted to make sure that, because it really upsets me.
Fair enough. Thank you ever so much, Daniel. We really, really do appreciate it, as you can see in all the messages that are coming through today. So thank you to everyone that's come along today to the webinar, and for all of your questions. And hopefully Daniel's been able to answer them. As we've said in the chat all the way through, we will send you the recording and the handouts that Daniel has said, along with any links from the chat today. But thank you all for today, and have a safe and lovely afternoon. Stay out of pain, keep the low pain days possible. Take care, everyone.
Everyone, thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.